Hello Internet, AdoptedMike here, and this is my new graphics card. This is the MSI GTX 980 Ti Armor 2X. I felt the urge to get into some 4K gaming, and the R9 290X that this card is replacing, it was doing but it just wasn't good enough. I had to turn down a lot of the detail levels, so I was really looking for a more powerful card with a higher frame buffer, and this is what I decided. The Titan X was just a little out of my price range, and I wasn't quite sold on an 8GB 290X. I just thought that perhaps the frame buffer wasn't the only thing holding it back in 4K gaming. This card has all of the basic features of a GTX 980 Ti, like the Game Stream, GameWorks, G-Sync, DirectX 12 support. It's got the single HDMI, single DVI, and 3 DisplayPort output on the back, with the biggest difference here being that MSI has just slapped a different cooler on it, and it's not a reference PCB either, so they've tweaked it to their military class 4 standard and added the 2 fans as well too, and then there's also some extra heatsink on the componentry around the graphics card, like the power delivery and such. Unfortunately, however, there is no backplate on this card. I was kind of hoping for it, but since I'm using this in a build with a horizontally mounted motherboard, it's not nearly as much of a problem, I suppose, as it would be in a vertically mounted motherboard where you need more support for the graphics card, or particularly the heatsink. But anyway, it wasn't a huge deal breaker for me, although at least it is a black PCB, so it does look all right. So speaking of 4K gaming, let's just get right on with my testing results. The first game I tested in is my current favorite right now, the Phantom Pain, and as you can see here, it made quite a difference, especially when we got to those extra high details. But you know, that's definitely probably a big frame buffer issue there that was really killing the 290X, and on all high I would say that's probably more of just a GPU performance as well too, not probably as much of a frame buffer difference there, but it did make a pretty considerable difference in gameplay in this particular title. And then in another favorite of mine, Shadow of Mordor, you can see here as well too that it was a bit of a difference as well. And this one for sure, I was having max frame buffer issues with the 290. I was capping it out. Even in the very high preset, it was starting to hit the limit of how much VRAM it is. And even with all sliders at the max, it was starting to smack at the 6GB limit as well too. So it's just a very VRAM demanding game as well. And you can definitely tell that by the graph here. So I wanted to try out a little bit of an older title, so I popped in Tomb Raider here, and as you can see, again, it was definitely weighted towards the newer technology graphics card with the 980 Ti, which was definitely to be expected, but I was curious as to, well, that Ultimate preset, how well the 980 Ti would work on it, and it definitely did better, but we unfortunately weren't able to pull 60 FPS on it. But at any rate, it just kind of goes to show you a little bit of like an older title here. So for a synthetic benchmark, I ran Valley, as you can see here, and you can tell that the GTX 980 completely wiped the floor with the 290X again, so I felt pretty good about my purchase decision here. But one thing I noticed that kind of shocked me was the GPU boost in the graphics card was allowing it to hit 1493, and that's without any tweaking. All I did was slide the GPU power slider all the way over on MSI Afterburner, and it was hitting 1493 by itself. So it was interesting to see what a synthetic benchmark could do by pushing the card all the way, although I did have to set a fairly aggressive fan profile to keep it from throttling, but it was hitting 72 degrees Celsius, and the card was it was running hard, but I was really impressed to see 1493 out of this particular benchmark. So to wrap it all up, I wanted to kind of use this graph to show like a price comparison. So as you can see here, what I paid for my 290 and what I paid for the 980 Ti, it was a dramatic difference. It was showing in the 4K benchmarks that the 980 Ti was better, but I don't know if it was this much better. The other graphs definitely weren't leaning this heavy on the Nvidia side, but so it goes to show you there's a price per performance is actually pretty good for the 290X, and it's possibly not as good for the 980 Ti. However, for 4K gaming though, there was some situations where you could compare the two and one would almost be unplayable compared to the other, and then without setting detail levels down, obviously. So it kind of just depends on what you want to spend on a card. I would say this is definitely not a budget card by any means, the 290X not being one either, but definitely the 980 Ti is more suited for 1440p at a minimum, with 4K being a fantastic option for it. The 290X, I would say that's probably definitely a 1440p card. But while I've got this card and my 4K monitor, I am certainly going to be enjoying it as I dip my toes into 4K. So far, it's quite the detail level. I do enjoy it. I wish there was still a 4K 60 frames per second ultra setting kind of thing, but we may not see that for quite some time, unfortunately. But this is a good step in the right direction. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I'm enjoying this new card, and I'm enjoying being back in the video making process. So as always, thanks for watching.